David, of course, you go a long way back with these, don't you?
I do, yes, yes.
To the mid-60s?
Yep, yep.
And what was it like returning to the scene of the crime?
Just like yesterday.
Was it?
Yeah. Yep.
Even in Slough?
Yeah. Well, it was in the same road. One of the same buildings. Yeah.
That must have been very odd.
It was. I mean, you just opened the door and no. Let's go.
Aha! And here's the producers, Andrew Teasful and Stephen La Rivière. Well, that was worth waiting for. Thank you.
No.
So, Stephen, if I could start with you, I mean, this is how I imagine it happened. You've just finished filmed in Supermarionation. You've come home after a long day's work. You've poured yourself a glass of wine, slipped on a mini album in the mid-60s, and suddenly, eureka, you think. Is how it went?
Well, no, actually, when we were doing film in Supermarionation, and one of the things we wanted to do with these puppet links with Penelope and Parker on the basis that we never ever have a chance to make Thunderbirds, so this was our chance to do it by the back door. And the experience nearly killed us doing it. But in the middle of this utter misery, we went, wouldn't it be amazing if we actually did turn these into episodes? And we sat on this idea for a year, until just over a year ago, when I had an email from Giles Ridge, from ITV, and he said, could you speak to Christina Lima, because we'd like to talk about ideas for the 50th anniversary. And we thought, well, it's now or never, so we put together a pitch, and then all went off and found other jobs, because they'll never say yes. But thankfully, Giles and Christina, who I cannot praise enough, you know, they have been absolutely magnificent to us, not just in terms of helping sort out the rights issues, but getting on board with the idea, that sort of insane idea that we could bring Thunderbirds back, the classic version, one last time. And I mean, it's quite a tall order, to say we're going to rebuild all the puppets and all the sets, and we're going to try and make it look as close as possible to the original. And they got on board with that idea.
Was everything from scratch? You had nothing, no other props still around?
Well, the piano that appears in the corridor, that appears in Attack of the Alligators and the Imposters. But other than that, no, we had to start from scratch.
Can I ask you a question about logistics? Because
oh God,
I've got those mini albums, but I haven't listened to them for 40 years. So it seems to me, did you have to do much to them? It seems to me there's not much in there that actually makes you think that it's just oral.
It was a huge problem. We had to do a lot because they are designed just to be listened to. And so our two challenges were twofold. One, to expand them, to turn them into sort of fully rounded episodes with all the things that you... So for instance, if Scott Tracy suddenly bursts in, on Lady Penelope when she's strapped to the girder, you want that bit of him coming up to build the tension. There are no explosions in the mini albums. And in Stately Homes Robberies, International Rescue don't actually appear. It's just Lady Penelope and Parker. So our job was to try and take the raw material. For us, the most important thing were the voices, and then split that apart in any way we could, and try and reassemble it into something of a bit more of a traditional Thunderbirds adventure, albeit a bit shorter.
If you were to listen to the actual original story of Stately Homes, it's got virtually nothing to do anymore with ours. You've done so much to it to make it into an actual...
It's got very little plot, the original story.
Well, it's just a lot of sitting and talking originally, isn't it?
Well, in the original version of Stately Homes, Lady Penelope and Parker just turn up in the throne room, point a gun at Mr. Charles, and it's all over. So one of those things that we do, you're always looking for ways that you can try and move things around. So we moved that final confrontation and sort of split it in half and moved the back end of it to the crash site.
And little things like the tracking device that they planned on the helijet
Yes.
isn't there in the original, and it would have just been a discussion between Mr. Charles and Dawkins. It's just a way to break it up again.
Well, there's an example. So in the original mini album, when they're listening to Mr. Charles and Dawkins, and this is a problem we had all the way through, when there's radio treatment already on, you think, well, in order to do that for visual, you've just got two characters sitting there, and two puppets, and they're not that emotive. Just listening there to radio treatment, which is why we thought, what if the 1960s? And their 1960s sort of internal storytelling logic wasn't particularly robust. So they probably have stuck a dart in it and you could see them actually on the screen, even though it makes no sense whatsoever. But it made sense back then.
Because ostensibly the mini albums that are news stories, they're really the adventures of Lady Pugby and Parker, aren't they?
Yes.
You've expanded them quite well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We tried.
Yeah,
I was saying while you were out getting the puppets that you had to use some of that stock footage again and again and again, which pads the out, but also it's something that people want to see.
I think it is. As a kid, I never grew tired of what. As a kid, as an adult, never grew tired of watching. The detail is so intricate. I mean, what they were doing back in the 60s, apart from making our lives really difficult, is they did their job so well, and there's so much detail that goes into those sets and props. And I mean they very kindly gave me a private viewing of this last week so I could check it. And it was the first time I'd seen original Thunderbirds footage, like the launch sequences, that big on the screen, in high definition. The number of people who came to us and said, "Oh, well, I mean, how are you finding it? Because your episodes are in high definition, aren't they? That'll be better than what they had." And they weren't. They were shooting on 35mm film, which is still one of the best archival formats. Several thousand lines of resolution. It's
also thankfully makes their mistakes as noticeable as ours. So let's say a coward or something.
Yeah, I did notice a few mistakes on the petrol splat on the sky backing at one point. We must have forgotten to clean up.
But you were saying that sort of makes it even more like the original.
Yeah, I think the original has got. I think the original series does have some of the worst continuity I've ever seen in a television series. Oh, this man can tell us more about it.
What's continuity?
He's not joking. Every day we have to put up with this.
Explain which one's Scott, which one's Penelope.
It's Thunderbirds.
I have to put up with you every day.
All comes out now.
What the hell are you doing now?
There was a bet going between these two about who would actually roll a shot before 4 o'clock. And it got quite heated at times.
I should explain that when we were doing Abominable Snowman, the first one, is that, we're a very small crew. The original team were 150. And there were, on a daily basis, 14 of us.
So less than 150.
Yeah, a little bit less. So I'm the only person ever to have directed an episode of Thunderbirds from B&Q. So I spent most of my time trying to get materials in, which meant that very rarely did we actually roll a shot before 4 o'clock, which he then made a point of principle. And then when it was his turn on the floor, I would do whatever I could to schedule anything in priority to him actually getting started. So sorry, your puppet's not available now.
Done a bit before, you
Doesn't show.
know.
David, I was going to say that. I mean, what could you advise them from having worked on the original series? Were there wrinkles and tips you could have given them?
Yeah, but they didn't take any notes.
The youth of today.
Go away, you silly old buggy.
David wasn't the only person for the original series that you had at least on set, wasn't it? You brought some others.
No, we have Mary Turner, who came to operate on Stately House Robberies. And so that was actually a magic moment, after 50 years, to see David down on the floor and Mary up on the bridge. It's the closest you get to genuine AP films. And Mary said, with this thing about David, one of our other puppeteers, our puppetry supervisor, Lindsay Holong, commented that to direct for myself and Justin, it was like operating for theatre. But for him, it was like spontaneous improvisation. Because the cameraman would say, "Yeah, we're ready," and you go, "Right, turn over." I almost put the puppet down on the set, and before I knew it, we were rolling. And Mary said, apparently this is completely faithful to how it was in the 60s. She said, "Never cared about us up there. He just cares about the shot."
She was great, Mary, wasn't she?
She was absolutely terrific.
80 years old, and she was up that ladder like a 2-year-old, wasn't she?
Yeah, I think she actually climbed up that ladder faster than I did.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing, and after 50 years, you think most of us, if we stop doing something for 50 years, we sort of lose it. But
It's hard to hold the puppets up now, it's only been a couple of months.
No, just put to shame when you hold the puppets out for the first time. You have to stand there a long time, they're quite heavy. Your arm reached out. You're thinking, God, how long has it been? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, about an hour would go by. And Mary would just stand up there all day long.
So, Geraldine, you're on a gantry, are you? Is that what it
Yes,
works?
well,
Above
we
the
called it
set.
a bridge. That's how we called it. and about 6 feet above, I think, from the actual set. And you do spend a lot of time up there, and people often forget about you. And you're just sort of trying to find the way that's most comfortable, so, and the least dangerous also, because you don't want to fall on the set with the puppets.
No,
That
you
would
don't want to
crash.
damage the puppet.
No, yes, puppet first.
Which reminds me, how's Gordon's foot?
It's Scott's foot that's
Oh,
fallen apart. We'll take him to surgery later.
I mean, we often talk about puppets on, sorry, not puppets on the bridge, but puppeteers on the bridge. Puppeteering is a two-man job often. You get one person on top of the bridge that has all the arm strength, and then you have the person on the floor, which is often helping with the turning of the puppet, with the holding of the puppet in place, which is called the floor puppeteer. Because often, after 2 hours of waiting for the director to call the shot, you're... No, with you we didn't even need
The
the floor
director
puppeteer.
waits 2 hours while you muck about the puppets.
Trying to make them look nice for you.
No.
If you could shoot the back of their head, that's what you'd do.
Look, whichever way they come up, I'll there's a schedule to keep. Otherwise, matey here saying, why are we taking so long?
That's the producer's job.
That, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that and other nasty things. Calls me nasty names and all that.
Well, it sounds like it was a joy to work.
It was a lot of fun
Yeah.
and very hard work. They did the hard work, I had the fun.
It looks very handsome, and one of the reasons for that is the fantastic costumes. I think you had a hand in that as well, didn't you?
Well, that's. I had a hand in putting them on the puppets.
A wardrobe mistress.
And basically, yes, and basically making sure that they weren't, that they were looking good once on the puppets, but I didn't actually make any of the costumes. That was our costumier, Liz.
Who is
Oh,
in the
brilliant.
audience
Somewhere.
there.
There she is.
Go on then. I genuinely think the costumes are actually one of, if not the most successful element of the. And this is, we decided not to go for a straight recreation because the attitude is what would they have done in the 60s? They'd probably be coming up with their own ideas.
Yeah.
And Liz, who operated from her secret base in Switzerland.
And who've never done this before, never made miniature costumes before.
No, and it just turned out so many that were not aimed right at the period, but really, really stylish. And there are, I don't know how, there are at least 40 costumes, if not more, all produced by a single hand. And, when we were getting a bit low, to get a sudden delivery from Switzerland, take the lid off the box and try and guess, well, who would wear pink flamingos? And go, well, it must be Jeff Tracy. I really think that we owe a lot of the sort of visual success to Liz, and also to Barry, Barry Davis, who
Well, I was
made
going to
our
say,
entire
you've got a
cast.
lot of the team here. Can you just put your hands up if you worked on the show, just to show your appreciation for these people? Crew, but it's model builders and it's art directors. I mean, it was like a proper film shoot.
It was like a proper shoot, but we're probably the only film shoot ever where the principal puppet operator also does the colour timing. And actually makes it look like this. We all, and that's how we were able to operate, on our actually quite small budget, is that everybody was multidisciplined. And going back to Liz, she would pop in from Switzerland with the costumes and then clean the studio for us, which was a service we really needed. No one was above. And also particularly David, he did it originally, and yet would run and go and get the shopping for us, make cups of coffee. Everybody, pulled together. There was not one moment did anybody say, I'm too important for this.
And you mentioned that was quite like the earlier days of the Anderson shows at Island Park. Everyone is mucking in and you have to get something
Just
there
the
so you
same,
get on with it.
yeah, which was what made it fun.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, there's a point where it gets too big and the fun goes. But certainly on Thunderbirds we had the fun.
It was very poignant to see the dedication to Sylvia Anderson at the start. And how much about this did she know?
Well, she knew about it because she gave me, she called me just after we announced, and she said, "I hear you're making Thunderbirds." Yes. With puppets? Like, yes. Are you sure? Yes. Have you watched ITV? Yes. Oh, well, good on you. If there's anything I can do, just give me a call. But sadly, Sylvia, she never actually saw the episodes in the end, but she did give us her full support and blessing, and that meant a lot. I know that ITV are the copyright holders, but it meant a lot to also have both the estates supporting us, or indeed Sylvia herself, at that point.
From my point of view, the episodes look really authentic, and the only difference when I thought about it from when I first watched them in the 60s was, of course, that when you first saw them, they're in black and white. Because I don't think anybody saw Thunderbirds in Britain in colour until the 70s, when they were repeated. And when I was at home watching it, I turned the colour off. Just like and it really did look authentic. I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience now. I've just got a few minutes. Because we've only got a short time, could you keep the questions solely to this production rather than all the other manifestations of Thunderbirds, please? So anyone got a question, put your hand up and we'll get the microphone to you. Somebody down there just on the... Okay. Thank you very much.
Is there any scope for those who were unfortunate enough not to be able to fund it, for this to be sold? Maybe a percentage going to charities in memory of Gerry and Sylvia?
Well, there are plans afoot for the future of the 3 episodes, of which I can say absolutely nothing about them, because the nature of film and television production is that you say something and it all comes crashing down. So I shall remain fairly quiet about that.
Could you tell us something about the funding, though, how it worked?
That was a full-time job of itself, Kickstarter. Which it was a great idea for the idea of the 50th anniversary. Let's get the fans involved. Let's make this, something that people interact with and learn about the process as it goes along. And we originally put in our Kickstarter goal, thinking we would maybe cover 1 episode's worth of production, and within 2 days we'd reached that. And then within the week, we were going to make 3 episodes all of a sudden, and suddenly realised, this brilliant idea we had a few months ago, we've actually got to do it now.
It was the most successful Kickstarter campaign ever in Britain.
It was the most successful film-related Kickstarter in Britain.
TV. Yes, just...
How long did it take to make the models?
It depends model to model, doesn't it? The big mansion model that you see in Stately Homes Robberies took David Tremont, just one man, making that better part of 4 weeks, I think it was.
Yeah. And it disappeared in 10 seconds.
Yeah, well, it did, because you forget watching the explosions. It all happens much faster in front of the camera because we use high-speed photography, so it looks much bigger and much slower on screen. So 4 weeks work and gone. And he was really keen to push the button himself, which
He was so excited. I mean, we'd go up to him and say, "Oh God, we're so sorry about your model. It's so beautiful." He was like, "No, you don't get it. I want to see it blow up." He was so excited. Okay.
How about the puppets? How long does it take to make them?
It depends puppet to puppet again, doesn't it? Some of them are so much more difficult than others to match that look.
But each one, I think the incredible thing is that every puppet we had was hand of, we had a couple of sculptors, so Mr. Charles and Dawkins were provided by, and the Sanjeev Bhaskar look-alike, were provided by Stephen Mansfield, who I can't see, my people up there. But all the actual the final physical puppets were the work of one man, and they had a whole series of people who did them in the 60s, but Mr. Barry Davis here single-handedly cannot emphasise just how difficult it is. As far as we're concerned, there is only one man who can do it. It's not just a case of having access to the cast, which in many cases don't actually exist. The puppets were thrown at the end of the 60s, but even when you have a perfect cast, it's the way that they're painted, the way they look. Penelope is, as far as I'm, she is a work of art, and Barry does the whole thing, not just the internal mechanics. A lot of people will say they make puppets, but they don't do anything. If they don't operate, they're not a puppet. But these mechanically work beautifully. You know, the eyes, you know, they've got to have these real photographic depth. Barry hand paints each of the eyes. And the fact that something this small can blow up to that big, and you know, and hold the photography is, you know, so I think between Barry and Liz, we owe them a lot for it looking that good.
Got time for a couple more?
Hello. Hey.
Hello.
Obviously, you've done Thunderbirds brilliantly. Are there any plans to do anything for the other series? Obviously, you've got Captain Scarlet next year and maybe Stingray. Have you got
I
any
think Captain
plans?
Scarlet would drive us mad.
Yeah. What you don't see when it's blown up to this size is that their heads are actually quite fiddy, the mechanisms inside. And the Captain Scarlet heads are how much smaller?
They're about that big compared
Golf ball
to
size.
They're
tiny.
tiny. And already there, you know, we'd spend hours fiddling, oh, the eye mechanism doesn't work, oh, the mouth mechanism doesn't work, and, you know, we're just going crazy. So I'm not quite sure we'd survive Captain Scarlet.
It's also very boring from a puppeteer's perspective because they hardly move. You know, it looks great, you know, the final result, but the Thunderbirds characters, you know, are enormous fun. You know, we loved the idea of doing Stingray in about 10 years' time when we recovered from this.
After a very, very long
But for the moment, that's all, folks, for this. But we would love to see Supermarionation come back. You know, it has got, I think, still, because it's so, you know, unique. There is nothing like it on television, and that really accounts for its timelessness, really. And every time, not that I do it often, but when we go out with her, you know, one of the other puppets.
So every Friday.
Every Friday. You know, it's like being accompanied by being accompanied by a superstar. I was somewhere recently with her, someone said, oh my God, I can't speak. It's like meeting a really famous person. We were at ITV a couple of years ago, appearing on Good Morning Britain, and we came up to Penelope Parker, and the paparazzi were up there for Ben Affleck. Suddenly, you're surrounded by all these photographers, but they're all at your knees.
Which is odd.
There was one there, yes, right in the corner there, please.
And the puppets go wrong, we just kick them.
We tried that.
Yeah, my daughter's just given me a kick, so that's working. I just wondered, the biggest limiting factor to you making any more episodes, obviously, is that you've exhausted all the audio now. But some of the original voice actors in the original series actually had to change because of bereavements in between. So theoretically, if ITV came to you and said, we'd like you to make some new episodes, would you be prepared to make new ones with new voice actors, or would you sort of want to leave it there and finish on a high?
I think we'd have to consider that, you know, at the time and see how I mean, for us, it was really about the 1960s experience, but and for this sort of job, you really have to take all the ego out of it. You're not doing what you want to do, you're doing what they would have done. Warts and all, you know, it's no piece of filmmaking is perfect, and you're copying the imperfections. A new series would have to be different. I'm very keen on the idea of Thunderbirds being a sort of 60s, as I always say, a 60s view of the future in America by people who've never been to either. You would have to do certain things too.
Yeah, and it would be an incredibly hard process trying to recapture those voices or recast those voices.
Well, later, people example.
And you would never find anyone that sounded like Sylvia as Lady Pet. That, you know, that performance is it's just so right for the character, and you would struggle to find someone that would fit that face.
Although I would like to see the adventures of Mr. Charles.
I
I think it would be a load of fun to watch.
And we're actually going to leave you with a clip. We've got one more clip to go. But before that, though, do you want to set up the clip, and then I'm going to...
Well, the puppets, they are, I believe that Gerry Anderson used to refer to them as little bastards. You know, they are notoriously difficult to work with. You would not believe the hours and hours you spend on set trying to get the bloody things to do one thing. And we had one particular shot, as a trademark of this man, which is, you see the human hand inserts, which actually Géraldine is Lady Penelope in these 3 episodes, hands and feet.
Not something I expected doing in my life at all, and actually seeing your foot on that screen is really strange.
Géraldine didn't really know, having grown up in Switzerland, that much about Thunderbirds. And I said, oh, come and join us, it will be fun. Within 10 days, she found herself being drilled to a girder.
By that man over there.
Yeah, that man over there. All in the name of filmmaking. Legit filmmaking. Anyway, so this particular shot. Well, leather straps and everything.
Fantastic.
A lot of the crew had to leave the building. Sorry, anyway, so a trademark of this man is the human hand in the same shot as the puppet. So I thought, I've got no original ideas of my own, I'll make his idea. So I thought when Scott first enters the ice cave, and you have a human hand in the foreground, and the hood, the puppet in the background. And I thought, so you have the hand come up, you've got 6 seconds to switch off that beam, and the hood puppet would turn around and return fire. Which isn't quite what happened, as we shall see.
Okay, and I'm going to thank the panel. Thank you, Stephen, Andrew, Geraldine, and David, for a fantastic time. Thank you.
Okay, you've got 3 seconds to switch off that beam.